You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
Welcome back in. 5:15 is the time from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studio. Zach Gelb Show, 609-919-9200 is the number to get on board. I saw some unfortunate news last week, and that was that Ron Burke, who's going to hop on board with us right now, is out at Comcast Sportsnet, and he's been at that station since their inception in 1997. So we're going to talk a little Philadelphia sports right now with Ron Burke, who's kind enough to hop on board with us right now. Ron, first off, congratulations on a great run at Comcast Sportsnet, and how are you?
Hey, Zach, I'm doing well. Thanks. I appreciate it very much. It's been a nice run. I was there from day one with some really talented people. And so it ended just the other day, and I'm looking forward to whatever's next.
And you know, being in a business, and this business especially, when you go 18 years at a company, it's unbelievable success. So when you walked out of Comcast Sportsnet in their building for the final time last week, what were some memories that came back to mind for you?
Well, I spent part of that day, Zach, with some people who were originals as well. Michael Barkhand, Derek Gunn, we were all there at the beginning. So you had those moments of reminiscing about the early days. So I had just taken part in some of those conversations. So it took me back. And then also there was also a lot of people there that are newer and some that are pretty new to Comcast Sportsnet. And so, I see them as people who have their futures ahead of them. And, I'm very fortunate to have worked with some really talented people who helped me look good on air, in front of the camera, and behind the scenes as well. And so for me, it was a day of reflection and really having conversations with people across the spectrum of the place and just thanking them for the time that we spent together.
You've been in this area covering sports well before 97. You were here in 1988 covering Philadelphia sports. Just after doing it for all these years, what does that position mean to you? Because really, being a broadcaster in Philadelphia, it's definitely special.
It's a position of honor for me. When I came here from Richmond, Virginia, which is my hometown, in 88, as you mentioned, and I was 24 years old, so I was very young, just about 2.5 years out of college, or maybe 3 years out of college. And so for me, coming to a city as big as Philadelphia, I did not expect it at the time. I was looking at some smaller markets in Philadelphia. Channel 10 showed interest, and so I got the job there. And so for me, coming to the big city at age 24 that's something that's pretty unique to do it that early. But I was fortunate to have some people. I worked with Big Al Meltzer at Channel 10. I was fortunate to work with some really good people who helped acclimate me to the market rather quickly and just threw me in there. And I got plenty of opportunities working with Big Al, which was a real treasure. And as time has passed, I look back and I see how valuable that was. But what I also learned over the many years that would follow since 1988 is the importance that sports fans place on their fandom in this city and the expectation they have for their teams are through the roof. And my responsibility as somebody who brings that information to them and has brought that information for such a long time is to be true to the fan, i.e. the viewer, and to report it as I see it. And I think I've done that to a pretty good degree. And I think the fans have really come out. The viewers have come out over the last few days on social media and with the comments they've made have been overwhelmingly supportive and thankful. So I feel like I've done it right. You don't always get to realize that when you're doing it because you're in the forest at the time. But now I'm standing outside, and I can really see. And I'm so thankful to the people who've watched and have taken time to just share their thoughts about the job I've done over the many years and the experiences they've had watching. And it really has warmed me more than I could have ever predicted. I love the fans here; they're terrific.
No question. You did it the right way, and you did it with class and integrity. And right now, you leave at a downtime in Philadelphia sports where people are looking ahead for the future. And when you were here, you saw the Phillies win a World Series. You saw the Eagles get to a Super Bowl, Flyers win the Eastern Conference, and the Sixers go on a pretty nice run led by Allen Iverson. Covering those teams at those memorable times, those happy times, the jovial times, what was that like for you?
It was great to be up close to it. If you mentioned the Phillies who won it all in 2008, well, back in 93 when they were beaten by the Blue Jays, I was covering that series, and I was in Toronto at Skydome when Joe Carter hit that game-winning home run, which just crushed everything. And so being up close to it then was the lowest of lows, and to then come back 15 years later in '08 and to see the team reach the mountaintop and win the World Series. Comparing those two, it was the lowest of lows and the highest of highs. So I'm fortunate that I was able to be here for both of those, so I could understand what both were about. I'll tell you, Zach, for the longest time after coming in '88, I thought I would never, ever see a parade in this town. And so when the Phillies had one, I was camped out at Broad. I think it was Broad in Washington. I forgot exactly the street I was on, but I was right down there on the parade route, and it was fantastic being around the fans because so many people had waited so long for that moment. You mentioned just in general about being able to cover teams in this town and what it represents. When the teams are good, the fans are sky high, the ratings are better, and people are so excited about the future. And as you mentioned, right now we're in a down spell right now, and you just hope that somebody can find the key that opens the door. And who's that team going to be? I don't know who it's going to be as we talk today, but you hope that the right decisions are made. One thing I've seen is that it comes down to we have the cliche of a total team effort as it relates to playing on the field, but that really spreads throughout organizations. You need management and football or baseball or basketball or hockey administration being on the same page. You need the coaching staff being given the players that fit what they want to do. And so it's so difficult to win big in sports. You look at a team like the Patriots and you see how unique that is, that they win all the time. They win big every year. And then you come to Philadelphia at a time like this and you say, who's gonna turn that key that unlocks the special door that opens to maybe a championship, but to constant competitiveness at a high level. And it's a great challenge, but I tell you, regardless, fans are engaged for 12 months a year, from January through December and beyond that, and that's what makes it interesting. We see these leagues have spilled over. The NFL is now a year-round league, same with other sports, and it keeps you engaged. And as long as that's the case, I think no matter how teams struggle, you want success, no doubt, but when teams don't struggle, you can still have interesting points in the offseason, looking toward the combine, looking toward the draft, assessing the draft, looking towards camp and what have you. So the engagement of it all, I think, is what keeps me so riveted from month to month that a season really never ends.
Ron Burke with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. We talk about that future. You look at the Eagles, if anyone had one dying wish in this city, that it would be for an Eagles championship, and that parade would just be absolutely crazy on Broad Street. Now everyone looks at Howie Roseman. We saw year one of this new Howie regime, and it got off to a nice start, but then after that, it wasn't that impressive, and now it's up to Howie to figure out how to bring in talent. Where is your confidence in Howie Roseman right now?
Well, I'm a little uncomfortable. Okay, I'm a lot uncomfortable with the way that whole thing was handled. Here a guy is, he was removed from his position by a coach who had been here just a couple of hours, and Jeffrey Lurie, I'm sure, felt pigeonholed or locked into a corner, so he had to make the move to give the power to Chip Kelly. Howie Roseman stays around. Now he's back. I just have a difficult time throwing trust behind the way it was orchestrated, because if Howie was the guy to run the football organization, that should have been clear and present before the Chip Kelly thing blew up. And obviously Chip Kelly as a coach blew up, and so now he's gone, and you're starting over with the Doug Peterson era. But I'm a results guy. I'm not going to condemn him, Burger. Howie's been back on assignment for a year, and while I'm uncomfortable with the way everything was handled, he has the opportunity to get results. And now the interesting thing, though, Zach, is now you're in a division that's on the come-up where the Giants went to the playoffs. The Redskins did not go to the playoffs, but they came within the game of going to the playoffs. And the Dallas Cowboys have become this team that has taken the league by storm. And you look at the quarterbacks around the division, and sure, you have Carson Wentz here, which it's a good thing you do because you have a future here with that quarterback. I like Carson Wentz. I'm a fan of his, and I'm looking forward to his growth. I think he has the potential to be a dynamic performer in the league, especially with the number of reps he's gotten. But the task of competing in your own division is going to be even tougher. Dallas is potentially a Super Bowl participant, and I don't think Dallas is going to win the championship. I think they're a Super Bowl participant potentially for sure. And so now, you're asking Howie to not just be good in certain areas. He's got to be great in most areas he touches, because at this point, with the division being now so competitive and on the come-up, a mistake becomes more magnified, and it could really send you in a free fall that'll be more difficult to recover based on what the teams directly around you are doing in the NFC East.
I like the way you said that. Just because you have the franchise quarterback, and I think Carson Wentz is going to be a special player, it doesn't guarantee anything. Because if you take a look at Indianapolis, the Colts have Andrew Luck, and Ryan Grigson has just destroyed that franchise. He's really done a bad job in Indianapolis. So Howie should honestly look at Indianapolis, and whatever he see going on there, he should do the opposite.
It's a challenge, I get that, but it's a job you have to do. When you wear that hat, that's your responsibility. You hold the public trust, and people are counting on you to do that. And it's multifaceted. It's about understanding what your coaching staff needs on the field, which is why coaching continuity is key. When you change over a coaching staff, new guy comes in as a head coach, the coordinators come in, they all need new pieces. You start turning over old pieces, and in some cases, you turn over pieces that are still viable, like we saw when Chip Kelly became a first-time administrator with authority to make personnel decisions, and it was a mess. So you have to know what your organization represents, what it stands for, from the top to the bottom. Give the coaches the pieces that they want, and if you don't do that well, you're going to pay for it. Because in the NFL is hard because it's an attrition business too. You can put all the proper pieces in place, lose the wrong player, i.e. Oakland, and it's over. It's done. And you're starting over next year with the same kind of dream, the same kind of hopes, the same kinds of aspirations, hoping that you can compete again at a high level and that things will fall into place. And that's the challenge with the NFL is you could be the smartest guy in the room, making the smartest moves in the room, lose the wrong player, and it goes up in smoke.
Ron Burke with us right now. All right, so going on with the Eagles, too, and we talk about that coaching staff. Greg Lewis today was let go by the Eagles. And I don't think that Greg Lewis was this great wide receivers coach. I don't really know how to judge him. I thought he did some things poorly. But those wide receivers, the talent was not good this year. Do you blame Greg Lewis for that, or you just look at the talent on this roster and say, hey, you could put the greatest receiver of all time and make him a coach, and they wouldn't have got anything out of this unit?
Well, yeah, he was such a short timer that I can't assess what Greg Lewis did. I don't know how good he was. I don't know how bad he was. I don't know how much he was able to reach players and they still couldn't do it, or he reached players that made them better. Maybe Greg Lewis is not the coach. Maybe they wouldn't have been as good. I don't know. I cannot assess that. But what I can tell you is the organization, I talk about this being multifaceted, top to bottom, the organization made significant investments in the position by drafting Nelson Aguilar in the first round. And to me, when a player comes in that high and the player doesn't achieve, I blame the organization. You put a first-round grade on them, chose him the first round, and so my expectation as an outsider, as a fan, is that this guy is going to be a major contributor because of the value you as a team placed in him. So when he fails, and I know Aguilar's taking a lot of heat, and I think the player does have to bear some of the burden, but you as an organization decided that he was the right player to invest a high pick on, and you did that. So they should be held to account. That wasn't a Greg Lewis decision, but his responsibility is to get the unit to play, and I can understand when the unit underperforms. That's the way it is. It happens in the business. I get that, but I can't assess what kind of job he did, whether he was good or bad. You look at Jordan Matthews, a second-round pick who's performed to that level, I believe. But if you recall in the offseason, and I'm sure you do, they thought Ruben Randall would be a player for this team.
Yeah.
They thought Chris Gibbons would be a player for this team.
Didn't turn out too well.
And those guys didn't even make it to September. So that's not Greg Lewis's fault. And so I want to see. All right. So here's the thing. Let's turn the page. Greg Lewis is going. So who's the next guy? Hopefully it's a guy with more experience, because my assumption is, I'm making this assumption, that they sat in a room and determined Greg Lewis, while the player who got the most out of his ability was inexperienced as a coach, maybe that's the decision they made. I'm going to assume it is, and that the next guy who comes in there will have some experience, and hopefully we'll get better results.
By the way, Ron, since you've been doing this for a very long time in Philadelphia, you interacted with a lot of good players and a lot of good coaches. Who are some of the better guys to interact with during your time of doing this?
You're talking football only?
Whatever sport you want in Philadelphia.
All right, well, look, I'll take you back to the beginning. When I first got here, the first big star that I interviewed was Charles Barkley. They sent me out to a golf course. He was golfing one day at a charity event. And to me, Charles, I'm 24 years old. To me, Charles, I might have been 25 by then, actually. Charles is, he's the superstar Philadelphia 76er. I'm like, wow, I got to go interview Charles Barkley. And he couldn't have been nicer. Extended his hand, welcomed me to town, et cetera, because he had seen me. And so that left a big impression on me. So Charles has really been near and dear to me, not just for that, but that certainly was a great starting point. And over the years, He's always been a great guy to deal with. Football, I am very partial to Randall Cunningham since I hosted his show for 5 years. If I may go back even further, and not talk so much about the current players, but he was always great to work with. So I enjoyed that. And I would say over time, some of the coaches were great. Larry Brown was always great to me. Buddy Ryan was terrific back in the day. In recent years, I haven't been a beat guy like I was in the earlier days. So I'm not as around the players as much as I used to have any strong opinions about them. But I would say in the times I have covered the Sixers in the locker room, Flyers in the locker room, which is not as more dressing room. Eagles probably more than the others in the clubhouse. Jimmy Rollins was really cool. I like J. Roll a lot. Ryan Howard. Chase was good. And I know I'm naming probably the stars and the obvious guys, but I would say that I've been very fortunate overall to have players that treated me as a professional, and I'd like to believe that part of that was because I treated them the same, and the ship I sent out came back in. And that's the way I'd like to believe it. I've been very, very fortunate in this town to have good working relationships with the players and the coaches that I've dealt with. And I believe it stems from the fact that I always tried to be straight up accountable and direct with them when I've dealt with them. So I would say I could name probably 20 other guys, but you probably don't have the time,
No, I hear you. What was the toughest day on the job for you?
The toughest day on the job? Well, that's a good one. I would say that, one of the great things about the business is every day is different, so it changes. So it never gets mundane in that respect. But the toughest day on the job, it's hard to say, because I don't know that I've had a day that has taken me to that point, to that place. Even my last day on the job the other day, in the sense that I won't be working with some of the people that I've worked with ever again. I mean, I'll have contact with them. Our relationships are what they are. So it's not like I'm leaving and won't see these people again. So in terms of separation, I'm leaving there. But I've left jobs before and maintained relationships with people as well. It's hard for me to say. I can't think of a toughest day right now.
Now, we've seen a lot of people, unfortunately, longtime people, leave Comcast Sportsnet during this year, Leslie and Neil. Did you see this coming, your time coming to an end there?
Well, my first discussions about it were in early November, and it was then that I knew that I would be leaving CSN. They're going through a period right now of change. It's dramatic change, as it turns out. I don't know what's to come down the pike, but I know that the feeling, not just there, but industry-wide, is that there's more change, not less, on the horizon. And I just felt like after the conversations we had about their thoughts about my position there, my role there going forward, and what I felt I could do going forward, it didn't jive. It didn't mesh. And I said that, this is going to be over. It's going to end. I'll go somewhere else and find something else when my contract ends. And my contract ended the other day.
Well, Ron, before we let you run, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. You're a legend at what you do here in Philadelphia, and a lot of young people in the business, including myself, look up to a broadcaster like you and your professionalism. And I have to imagine you won't be a free agent too long, Ron. I think you'll be okay, all right?
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And like I said, the people who've watched for many years have been so supportive, as have you, Zach. And I just say thanks a lot. It's great talking to you, and I wish you the best.
We appreciate it, Ron. Be well.
All right. Take care. You too. Be well.